Baruchim haba and welcome everyone to a special edition of All Parsha, the Chasam Sofer on Parshas Noach. We started a new series of the Chasam Sofer al HaTorah. This week, I'd like to begin with the question of the Brisker Rav, and we'll segue into the Chasam Sofer to see the Chasam Sofer's amazing approach to the phenomenon of Noach sending out the raven and then the dove. Vayishlach es ha'orev Vayetze Yahrtzeit v'shev ad yevoishes hamayim me'al haaretz parak ches pasuk zayin. The Brisker Rav, the Griz, quoted in the Sofer Shaila Torah, brings a very important question. Why is Noach sending out a raven and a dove? For what purpose? To see if the land dried? Even when it dried, he still didn't go out until Hashem told him. So he's not going out anyway until he gets word from Shamayim. So why is he sending out the raven and the dove? Is it just a matter of curiosity? In fact, the Medrash Rabbah says, Parsha Lamdad Ois Daled, Noach says, Keshem shaloi nechnasti ela bershus, kach ani yoytze ela bershus. Just like I only entered with permission, I'm not leaving without permission. So if he's not leaving without permission, what's the purpose of sending out these birds? Furthermore, the Brisker Rav asks an even stronger question. It would seem that what Noach did was incorrect. How was he allowed to send out the animals? Because the pasuk says that Hashem gave specific permission for Noach to allow the animals to leave the teva, which means before the permission, he was not allowed to send out the animals. So why did he do it? How was he allowed to do it? These are the questions of the Brisker Rav. Interestingly, the Netziv in the Hamak Davar, Parak Ches, Pasuk Zayin, says, because of this question, that why did Noach send out these specific birds and not other birds? There are many other birds that fly better than the raven and the dove. So the Netziv says, actually, these birds were not part of the pairs that Noach brought onto the teva. Instead, when Hashem told Noach, "Boi ata v'chol beischa," with you and your whole household should go onto the teva, Noach had pets, like an aristocrat who would have a prestigious bird like a oirev and like a dove. Now, an oirev is not very good at flying distances. However, the yoina, which is often trained to be a messenger bird or carrier bird, was able to fly much further away. So the oirev was yatsa halach v'shoiv, was just sort of hovering around the area, but the dove was able to fly further on. So the restriction that animals cannot leave without permission, says the Netziv, was only for the animals that he brought in terms of the animals that were the pairs that he brought, but not his personal pets. Our Chaim HaKadosh says, Noach sends the raven out of the teva. He was banishing the oirev, because the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Adav Kovches, that the oirev was shimesh b'teva. It engaged in relations on the teva, which was inappropriate. Therefore, Noach did not allow it to leave. Instead, he banished it. Interestingly, Paneach Raza, one of the great Rishonim, brings from Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi that Noach sent out the birds because even though he wasn't going to leave, but Noach had to guesstimate how much longer they would be in the teva in order to know how much food to allocate per day. He was very restrictive in how much food he gave every day because he didn't know how long they would be there. So he figured if they would be there only a short amount of time more, he'd be able to allocate more food per day. But the Chasam Sofer has a wondrous approach to this whole subject, because Rashi tells us that this raven, which was halach v'shoiv, until yevoishes hamayim, until the water dried up. Rashi quotes Chazal that it was actually designated to sustain Eliyahu when Eliyahu had to run away from Achav. Chazal tell us that when Noach sent away the raven said, "No, I can't go. I might encounter the angel of cold or heat. It might be very uncomfortable." Now the truth is, says the Chasam Sofer, the raven seemed to be correct, because Hashem decided exactly when to allow the animals to leave the teva. And Noach did not have reshus to send out these animals. So it would seem the oirev was correct. So what was Noach doing? Says the Chasam Sofer, listen to this approach. Yesh kayach lechachamim lakar davar min ha-Torah. B'shas hadchak. B'sha shatzricha. The rabbis have the capacity to uproot Torah law. Even though Torah law was that nobody's allowed to leave the teva until Hashem gives permission, nevertheless, Noach, as a chacham, had the capacity to uproot the Torah. And therefore, he made a decree, tzadik goizer, and the raven would not have been harmed, not by the heat and not by the cold. And this, in fact, in the time of Eliyahu, was the debate between Achav and Eliyahu. Achav did not believe that Chiel was punished for building up Yerichai with the loss of his children like Yehoshua ben Nun promised. Achav couldn't accept that a Chacham has the capacity to make such a decree and then heaven will endorse the punishment that the Chacham decides. Therefore Eliyahu said, really? You don't believe in the capacity of Chachamim? I decree there won't be rain. And we know there's a discussion, because Eliyahu already had the key of resurrection. Could he have another key, the key of the rain? But Eliyahu needed to demonstrate to Achav, Yesh kayach lechachamim lakar davar min ha-Torah. So even though perhaps you would have thought the raven was correct in not going out, but he should have listened to Noach as the chacham, and therefore the way the raven was rectified is later on in history he was dispatched to support Eliyahu to demonstrate that he needs to show deference to the Chachmei Yisrael, because Eliyahu's debate with Achav was regarding this issue of to what extent a Chacham has power and capacity. This is what the Chasam Sofer writes in Chasam Sofer al Torah, page Chavtes. On the bottom of the page, going on to page Lamed, the Chasam Sofer references the first piece, that even though technically none of the animals had permission to leave the teva, but yesh kayach lechachamim lakar davar min ha-Torah. L'tzayrach shar, for the need of the time, l'migdar mosa, and therefore the yaina, Klal Yisrael is compared to a yaina. Why is Klal Yisrael compared to a yaina? Because we listen to the chachamim. The yaina listened to Noach. The reason why Klal Yisrael are compared to a yaina, says Chasam Sofer, is because we demonstrate the ability to show deference to the chachamim, even though we may not understand, like the yaina listened to Noach. But says Chasam Sofer, the Oyrev, the raven, he's an apikoros, the Chasam Sofer says. Why is the raven apikoros? Because he wanted to do what he thought was right, what God wanted, but Hashem wants us to show deference to the Chachmei Yisrael. And therefore, the raven, even when he was sent out, he went back and forth, but he didn't really fly away because he didn't feel he had permission to fly away. And the raven suffered hunger and thirst, but the raven was a sinner because he was an apikoros. He did not show deference to the Chachmei Yisrael, says Chasam Sofer. But because he did so in honor of Hashem, because he thought he didn't have reshus, he was given some reward that at least he was zoicha to be mefarnes Eliyahu in the times of famine. So regarding the question of the brisker Rav, what power, how was Noach allowed to send the dove and the raven? This was an example of yesh kayach lechachamim lakar davar min ha-Torah lemigdar milsa u'letzayrach hasha. Wishing everyone a wonderful week and a wonderful Shabbos, Parshas Noach, haba aleinu l'tova.